Two beginner homesteaders. Same size lot, same budget, same starting point. One of them spends $300 a year on fertilizer, constantly hauls animal waste, and watches half their plants struggle every summer. The other one? Their garden gets richer every single season, and they're spending almost nothing to make it happen. The difference isn't experience. It isn't money. It's one system that serious homesteaders have been quietly using for decades, and most beginners walk right past it without ever understanding what they're looking at. Today, I'm breaking it down completely. What it is, why it works, how to set it up, and the mistakes that kill it. Let's get into it. Here's what conventional homestead thinking looks like for most beginners. You raise animals over here, you grow a garden over there, and the waste from your animals sits somewhere in the middle, hopefully composting, but usually just piling up. So you end up buying fertilizer from a garden center. You end up hauling manure separately. You're paying for feed on one side and paying for soil nutrients on the other, and none of it connects. Everything is a separate problem, a separate expense, a separate task on your already full to-do list. This is the core mistake. Not working hard enough. Most beginners work incredibly hard. The mistake is thinking in straight lines instead of loops. Experienced homesteaders look at animal waste and immediately ask, "What else on my property needs this?" They look at a garden that needs fertilizer and ask, "What am I already producing that can fill this need?" That shift in thinking changes everything. And the rabbit and worm bin system is the simplest, most accessible example of this loop thinking in action. Here's the full loop, and it's simpler than you might think. You keep rabbits in a wire-bottom hutch. Manure falls continuously through the wire floor throughout the day. Directly below the hutch, you place a worm bin. The worms eat the rabbit manure, process it, and convert it into worm castings, one of the most nutrient-rich fertilizers that exists. You take those castings and feed your garden. Your garden produces more food. Some of that food goes back to your rabbits. And as your worm population grows beyond what the bin needs, you feed the extra worms directly to your chickens as a free, high-protein supplement. Rabbit feeds the worm bin feeds the garden and the chickens. Garden feeds the rabbit and you. Nothing leaves the system as waste. Every output becomes an input somewhere else. What makes this so powerful is that you're not adding extra work to your day. You are going to feed the rabbits anyway. You are going to manage the manure anyway. You are going to fertilize the garden anyway. This system just connects those dots so that each task you are already doing also solves another problem automatically. Let me give you the science quickly, because understanding this is what makes you confident enough to actually build it. Rabbit manure is what's called a cold manure. If you've ever put fresh chicken or cow manure directly on garden beds, you know it burns the plants because the nitrogen levels are too high. You have to compost those hot manures for weeks before they're safe. Rabbit manure is different. You can apply it directly to soil without burning a single plant. This alone makes rabbits exceptional animals for a small homestead. But when rabbit manure goes through a worm, something more powerful happens. Worms don't just break down organic material, they transform it. Worm castings contain 5 to 11 times more available nutrients than ordinary soil. They're packed with beneficial microorganisms that improve soil biology long-term. And they contain humic acid, which acts like a slow-release delivery system. So the benefits build in your soil season after season, not just one quick burst like synthetic fertilizer. The worm species that makes this work is called Eisenia foetida, red wigglers. not the earthworms in your backyard. Red wigglers are composting worms, specifically adapted to live in decomposing organic material. They eat fast, reproduce fast, and thrive in exactly the environment that rabbit manure creates. A healthy pound of red wigglers processes about half a pound of material every single day. Setting this up is straightforward. Here's what you actually need to do. First, your rabbit hutch needs a wire bottom floor, so manure falls through naturally. Solid bottom hutches won't work for this system. To keep your rabbits comfortable, place a small wooden resting board inside the hutch. They'll use it when they want a break from the wire, and most rabbits are perfectly fine with this setup. Elevate the hutch enough to slide a worm bin underneath. Roughly 12 to 18 inches of clearance is ideal. For the bin itself, a simple wooden box or a large plastic storage tote with drainage holes drilled in the bottom works well for beginners. You don't need anything fancy to start. Before adding worms, fill the bin halfway with damp bedding. Shredded cardboard or cocoa coir are both excellent. The moisture level should feel like a wrung-out sponge, damp but not dripping. Then add your red wigglers. For 2 to 4 rabbits, start with about 1 pound of worms. You can find these from online vermiculture suppliers or local homestead groups. Once they're in and the system is running, your weekly maintenance is about 15 minutes. Checking moisture levels, adding dry bedding if it gets too wet, harvesting castings every few months by letting the worms migrate to a fresh side of the bin and scooping out what they've left behind. That's genuinely it. 15 minutes a week for a continuous supply of premium fertilizer. 4 mistakes to avoid so you don't waste your setup. The first is using the wrong worm species. Backyard earthworms will not survive in a concentrated manure bin. Always source Eisenia foetida specifically. This is non-negotiable. The second is overloading the bin too fast. If your worm population is still small and you add too many rabbits too quickly, manure accumulates faster than the worms can handle. The bin goes anaerobic, it smells terrible, and your worms start dying. Match your rabbit numbers to your worm population. Roughly 1 pound of worms per rabbit is a solid starting ratio. The third is poor drainage. Waterlogged bins lose oxygen, and red wigglers need oxygen to thrive. Always drill drainage holes in your bin and make sure it's not sitting in standing water. The fourth is ignoring temperature. Red wigglers work best between 55 and 77 degrees Fahrenheit. In extreme heat or cold, they slow down dramatically or die. Position your hutch in partial shade and insulate the bin in winter if your climate calls for it. The rabbit and worm bin system isn't complicated. It doesn't need a lot of land, a lot of money, or a lot of experience. What it needs is a different way of thinking. Seeing animal waste as a resource, not a problem, and building your homestead as a connected system instead of a collection of separate tasks. If you're just starting out, this is one of the best places to begin. Low cost, low risk, and it teaches you the loop thinking you'll use in everything else you build. Tell me in the comments, how much space are you working with right now? A backyard lot? A quarter acre? More? I'm going to take the most common answers and build the next video specifically around adapting this system to those spaces. Like the video if it gave you something useful. Subscribe if you want to keep building with me, and I'll see you in the next one.